Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating photo essay by photographer and professor Won-Jin Choi. And we're going to reveal a, kind of wild psychological quirk that affects every single one of us every single day. I'm going to prove to you why you have likely never actually seen your own face. I know, right? Sounds impossible. But by looking at the history of photography and the psychology of how our brains process symmetry, we're going to completely flip how you think about your own reflection. Okay, let's just dive right into this. I'm going to ask a question that sounds totally absurd, but historically speaking, is entirely true. Before the invention of photography, literally no human being had ever seen their true appearance. Just think about that for a second. Throughout the vast majority of human history, everybody, kings, queens, peasants, philosophers, went to their graves having only ever seen a distorted illusion of themselves. They were utterly convinced that what they saw reflecting back at them in a pool of water or a polished mirror was reality, completely unaware of the visual trick being played on them the whole time. To wrap our heads around this trick, we really have to look at how we experience reality. See, we live our entire lives experiencing our own faces exclusively through what we'll call the first-person perspective. That's the comforting, familiar, left-right reversed image we see in the mirror every morning while we're, changing our hair part or checking our teeth. But here's the kicker. That reversed image is completely different from the third-person perspective. That is the actual, unreversed orientation of your face that your friends, your family, and the rest of the world actually sees when they look at you. We are literally strangers to our own third-person perspective. So, for thousands of years, the mirror's monopoly on self-perception went totally unchallenged. But then, 1839 hits, and a massive technological leap happens. Photography is born. And what's super interesting is that it happened almost simultaneously in two different countries, sparking this unintentional, almost psychological rivalry between two brand new visual technologies that handled reality in very different ways. Now, the contrast here is just absolutely fascinating. Over in France, you had Louis Daguerre's method, the daguerreotype. It created a single image on a metal plate, but, just like a mirror, the image was reversed left to right. People were so blown away by the sheer magic of the technology that they didn't even care about the reversal. Meanwhile, over in England, William Henry Fox Talbot introduces the calotype. This method used a negative to produce multiple paper prints with a correct, true-to-life left-right orientation. For the very first time in history, a technology existed that allowed humans to see their own true likeness, exactly as the rest of the world saw them.
And this is where it gets crazy, because it brilliantly illustrates our deep, almost stubborn obsession with the mirror. You think people would be thrilled to finally see their true faces, right? Nope. According to Choi's essay, early humans actually relegated the highly accurate calotype mostly to documentary and landscape photographs. When it came to portraits, when it came to actually looking at themselves, they vastly preferred the daguerreotype. Why? Because they felt strangely unfamiliar and honestly uncomfortable with their own true, correctly oriented faces. They wanted the comfortable lie of the mirror, not the stark truth of reality.
And listen, this isn't just some dusty historical anecdote from the 1800s. You can actually try this yourself today. It's called the passport photo test. All you got to do is take a passport photo, or really any close-up photo where your face is completely straight on, and digitally flip it left to right on your phone. Then, compare that flipped version to the normal version. I promise you, you'll immediately realize just how alien and slightly off your true face feels to you compared to that flipped mirror face you've grown to love over the years. To show just how powerful this optical illusion can be in modern life, Choi shares this fantastic little anecdote in his essay. It involves an artist father who was looking at a professional portrait taken for his young daughter's first birthday. Now, as an artist, he obviously had a keen eye for visual detail. And looking at this beautiful photo of his kid, he immediately felt this overwhelming sense that something was strangely, inexplicably odd about her face. Initially, the dad just assumed the photo was bad. He actually complained about the photographer's lack of skill, thinking they had somehow failed to capture his daughter properly. But then, he did a direct comparison. He looked at the printed photo, and then looked directly at his actual daughter's face. And that is when he noticed the vital clue, her hairpin. The hairpin in the photo was on the completely wrong side of her head. Boom! The mystery was suddenly solved. The image he was looking at was a total left-right reversal. So it turns out the awkwardness he felt wasn't the photographer's fault at all. The true culprit was way more mundane. It was a simple, everyday mistake made by the film lab. Whoever was processing the negative simply loaded the film upside down, resulting in a perfectly reversed print. The father was experiencing his daughter's face in the first-person mirror perspective rather than the normal third-person perspective. And honestly, even on someone else's face, the difference was enough to trigger his artistic alarm bells.
Which brings up a massive psychological mystery. And really, it's the core question we need to answer in this explainer. Why does a simple reversed image of a supposedly symmetrical human face feel so intensely awkward and foreign to us? I mean, if a face is perfectly balanced on both sides, flipping it shouldn't make any difference at all, right?
Well, the answer lies in the myth of symmetry. The reality is, human faces are completely asymmetrical. One eye might be slightly higher, the jawline might pull slightly to one side, or, a smile might be just a bit crooked. Because we look in the mirror every single day, our brains memorize the exact layout of those asymmetrical quirks in reverse. So when we finally see a photograph showing our true orientation, all those tiny asymmetrical details are suddenly on the wrong side of our face. The clash between our beloved, familiar mirror image and the jarring asymmetrical reality that everyone else sees, it's just incredibly stark.
Yet, after unpacking all this science and history, Choi takes a really beautiful philosophical turn. He actually argues that this grand self-deception isn't necessarily a bad thing. In a highly poetic comparison, he describes the scene of a hair salon. He pictures women sitting in salon chairs, giving their hairdresser instructions, dreaming of transformation. They stare into the salon mirrors with this serious, intense gaze, much like the witch in Snow White, completely entranced by the idea of being the most beautiful one in the mirror. They are looking at an illusion, yes, but it is an illusion that empowers them.
Choi concludes with such a beautiful thought here. This mirror's lie isn't some malicious deception that we should be angry about or try to fix. Rather, it's a comforting, pleasant illusion. For whatever evolutionary or psychological reason, we just prefer the reversed version of ourselves. And engaging with that slightly altered reflection gives us a space to dream, to adorn ourselves, and it grants us a genuine sense of freedom and joy in curating our own self-image.
Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. As we wrap up our exploration of Choi's brilliant essay today, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. The very next time you walk past a mirror, just pause and adjust your hair. Then look closely and ask yourself, is the person looking back at you the real you? Or is the real you the one captured in a candid photograph, living out in the physical world? Think about that.